On this edition of the NESN College Hockey Podcast, we give you our 3 stars of the week in Hockey East, look forward to this weekend's games, and speak to Mitch Fossier, the multi-talented captain for the Maine Black Bears. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the NESN College Hockey Podcast. My name's Dakota Randall, alongside always Pat McAvoy. Pat, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Pat. Listen, I got a bone to pick with the USCHO. My UNH Wildcats beat number 2 Umass over the weekend after beating BC the week before, and they get nothing in the polls, no love. I don't want to hear anything about they also got votes, any of that crap. They got nothing. So that bothers me a little bit, but we'll get into that in a little while. We got a great show lined up for you. A lot of big games over the weekend. Great games coming up. We got an interview with Maine captain Mitch Fossier, the multi-talented Mitch Fossier. A lot of good stuff. Very interesting guy. So I'm excited about that interview. And about ahead of his team's game with UNH this weekend. You can see that game on NESN Plus Saturday at 7 p.m. on NESN Plus. And remember, all of our Hockey's coverage is brought to you by Rockland Trust, where each relationship matters. So we'll get to Mitch Fossier, we'll get to this weekend's game, we'll get to the polls and all that. But right now, as always, I want to look back on the week that was and start off with our 3 stars in Hockey East. So I'll get it started. My number 1 star of the week is Jack Dugan from Providence. He's been great all season, and he continued that over the weekend. Had 6 points, all assists, in 2 games against BU, a tie and a victory. On the season, he has 5 goals and 19 assists. He's just been a stud. Providence has been, for the most part, a very good team this season. They've lost a couple games, but they've, I think the number 10 in the nation right now. They've been very good, and Jack Dugan probably has been their best overall player. He's been great all season, and he continued that in a big way over the weekend for the Friars. Pat?
My first star of the week is Tyler Wall. So we talked about him last week. The senior goalie from UMass Lowell has, and for lack of another term, he's been a stud this season. He's been a brick wall in net. He stopped 68 of 71 shots and a win in a tie against Maine this past weekend. He has 30-plus saves in 8 of 11 games this year, and to top it all off, right now he's number 2 in the Hockey East in goals against average at 1.59, and he's first in save percentage at 94.9. All in all, he's had a great season so far, the New York Ranger draft pick, and I think it's just going to keep on continuing going forward. Yeah,
potential Hank Lundqvist replacement over there for UMass Lowell. You mentioned the 30-plus saves in 8 of 11 games this season. I think it's actually 6 in a row, too. So he's been great in net for the Riverhawks, just an absolute stud. Number 3 star of the week, I'm going to give it to also a goalie, Mike Robinson for UNH. He stopped 27 of 28 shots in that big win over UMass. He's allowed just 3 goals over his last 3 starts. And going into the season and a little bit over the last few weeks, we've talked about Ty Conklin, who was probably the best goalie in UNH history, had a good career in the NHL. He is now the goaltending development coach for whatever they're calling it over at UNH. Mm-hmm. And it remains to be seen, long term, what kind of impact he'll have. I know Coach Mike Sousa is really excited to have Ty Conklin in the fold. I remember growing up watching Ty Conklin, so I thought it was pretty neat that he was joining the coaching staff. But I just think Mike Robinson's been great so far this season. Overall, UNH's goalies have looked really good, and it's hard to not think that Conklin already is having some sort of impact because Robinson really looks good, really looks poised in net. So he's been great. He came up huge in that third period too against UMass. So great game for him and a deserving number 3 star of the week. So now let's get into some of the notable games from last week and segue right back into that UNH UMass game. I thought that was, for me, the highlight, at least in Hockey East, of the week. Again, UNH beats UMass. Number 2 UMass 3-1. I don't think that game was really much about UMass. We know how good UMass is. The Minutemen are one of the best teams in the nation. They're probably the favorites in Hockey East. They should be, they should go deep in the tournament. I just think we all expect them to have a great season. But UNH going into the season, they had a tough year last year, lost a lot of close games. We didn't know what to expect, and they've done very well. They've now won 3 straight games. One against BC, another team that everyone believes is one of the most talented in Hockey East, one of the most talented in all of the country. Then they beat Dartmouth, who's only played a couple games, but a lot of people are high on Dartmouth. And now UMass. So they're 5-2-1. Again, Mike Robinson was great in net. Max Gilden, defenseman, scored the game-winning goal against UMass, and he continues to be one of the best offensive-minded defensemen in the country. So UNH has been great, really impressed with the Wildcats. Again, I'm annoyed that they didn't get into the polls, but that's just more of a selfish thing because I'm a UNH fan, so I like to see them get some love on the national scene. But Anyway, so they got a 2-game series coming up this weekend against Maine. We'll get to that in a little bit. Maine is 5-3-2, big rivalry game. So we're looking forward to that. But yeah, another, again, just I think a really great win for UNH, kind of a statement win that they're going to be a tough out this year for all Hockey East teams.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to even go off your point about how UNH hasn't had any love in the polls yet, I think they're one weekend away. If they can come out this weekend and they can beat Maine, who's been sneaky good this season, I think that next week might be finally their week.
Yeah, agreed. I think, and again, not like it really matters. It's just the polls, but you know, we like to look at it. It's kind of like power rankings. And again, yes, I think if UNH just looks good, at least wins one of those games, I think they'll sneak back in there, depending on what the teams above them do, of course.
Hopefully, I'm rooting for them for you.
Thanks.
And then, so to kind of go into a game I was interested in, so we talked about it last week: Merrimack versus Northeastern.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Pat is he's a Merrimack alum.
Big Merrimack guy.
Big Warriors fan.
Recent 2019 graduate. But so Northeastern's been a team that I've been looking at this season, and they're usually good in the Hockey East, but they're coming off of 2 straight losses against UMass Amherst, and so I was interested to see how they're going to face off against a Merrimack squad who really hasn't been that great this year, and they kind of disappointed Northeastern. On the weekend they tied and won a game versus Merrimack. In the first game at Warrior Arena, Merrimack tied the game 1-1. Declan Carlisle, freshman defenseman, was strong for the Warriors. He assisted on the goal that game. And then in game 2, they ended up winning 3-1, and Northeastern's Tyler Madden was big. He had a goal and 2 assists on the weekend, and now he's actually he leads the Huskies in points with 6 goals, 4 assists. But it really wasn't what I expected out of the team that Northeastern's supposed to be, facing off against Merrimack.
Yeah, a little bit of a disappointing result for Northeastern. I think they're one of the better teams in Hockey East. I think they're number 14 in the country or something. They should they should sweep that series. I mean, but again, it's one of those things we say it all the time. There's no easy out in Hockey East. Any team can win on any given day. But yeah, I think that tie, and again, it's who wants to say that you can get a moral victory in a tie, but it is true. I mean, Merrimack definitely was an underdog in that game, and they played a great game, played Northeastern close, and I do think that's a good result for Merrimack.
It's true. And then just to go off one last point from last week's episode, Craig Pantano, he made his big return to Merrimack.
Yes, you said you wanted to boo him out of the arena.
I did.
What was the reaction like?
I'm pretty sure he got a strong reaction, and it paid off for him. He had a strong game back at Merrimack. He had 37 saves in game 1. He only had 19 in game 2 because he obviously didn't face as many shots. But it seemed like a big weekend for him, but the team overall just didn't impress me this weekend.
Yeah. I think the best is yet to come with Northeastern.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was a little head scratching. I was definitely surprised to see that tie against Merrimack. But we'll see what they do next weekend. For me, another game series that I was interested in is Minnesota-Duluth. They tied and beat Denver. Denver entered the weekend as the number 1 team in the country. Minnesota-Duluth, again, the 2-time defending national champions. Looking to become the first 3-peat since 1951 through 53. Michigan, the Wolverines, they're the only team to ever 3-peat in college hockey. But Duluth, they've been struggling a little bit. I think they entered the weekend like 3-3, 3-4, something like that. Regardless, not what you expect from them. But they sort of made a statement in this game, I think. They came out, they got the tie, and then the win was a 5-2 victory. In a game that was closer than the score would indicate. There was some insurance goals late that made it look the gap wider than it really was. But a great game for the Bulldogs. Kobe Bender, Noah Cates, Cole Koepke, I can never pronounce his name right. Regardless, they all had big games and scored for the Bulldogs. And again, Minnesota-Duluth had struggled a bit coming into this game, but I watched a little bit of these games, and my takeaway was just, it's clear that when they think they need to get up for a game or that they need to make a statement, or again, they're facing the number 1 team in the country, maybe they were thinking, we think we're the best team in the nation. We want to prove it. We're gonna kind of remind everybody who we are. This game, they got up and they proved it, and it's a statement game for Minnesota-Duluth to remind everybody that no, don't go assuming that we're going to have some down season. That we're trying to win that 3rd straight championship.
Absolutely.
So a big weekend for Minnesota-Duluth.
Another game that we were talking about last week that I was interested in going into the weekend was BC versus UConn, because BC is one of those teams that they're always near the top of the Hockey East and NCAA standings overall. But they haven't looked like the same BC Eagles this year. They lost 4 straight, but it looks like they might be taking a step in the right direction. They took on UConn last weekend, and they kind of blew them out both games. They won 6-0 over UConn Friday, and then 5-1 on Saturday. Freshman forward Alex Newhook was huge that weekend with 2 goals on Friday, and then 2 more assists on Saturday for 4 points overall on the weekend. And then junior forward Apeli Rasanen had a hat trick and an assist on Saturday. And so after the 4 straight losses, I think that maybe that was just some early season jitters, and it looks like maybe they're going to push forward now. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think it was, listen, I picked, well, I didn't pick, but I kind of gave you a don't be surprised if UConn pulls off an upset this weekend. Because they do have some talent on that team. A lot of Russians, so they're kind of a fun team to watch if you're into the Russian style of hockey. Mm-hmm. But it was a game in a series that Boston College should have dominated, and they did. So maybe, like you said, this is the Eagles getting back on track. Mm-hmm. They had scuffled a lot. They were up as high as like number 4 or 5 in the rankings, I believe, and then they shot all the way down to 19. Yep. Now they're up to 16. So yeah, I just it was a good weekend for them. They needed it, because if they had lost one of those games, let alone get swept or something, it would have been, we all would have been saying, what's going on over there with the Eagles, because there's just so much talent on that team. So yeah, I think strong weekend for BC, but one that they should have had.
Absolutely. And then, so the last game I was looking at that I was interested in was then number 5 Notre Dame versus then number 9 Ohio State. It was a big statement weekend for Notre Dame. They swept a 2-game series versus Ohio State, 3-2 in overtime Friday, then 2-1 on Saturday. And now after the big weekend, now they're one of 3 teams in the country that remain undefeated. So I'm interested to see how if they can keep that up going forward.
Yeah, Notre Dame looked great. They're one of the better teams in the country. If you get a chance to watch them, do it. I watched one of those games because it was on NBC Sports Network, I believe, and a lot of talent on the ice. 2 great teams. A lot of fun to watch. So just going to get into a couple other notable games before we get into our interview, or before we get into the polls. We're going to go over the polls and do our interview with Mitch Fossier. But first, just some other notable games from around the country. Alaska Fairbanks and Arizona State split. I was interested in this game solely because, just one, I think it's cool in general. Like, and college hockey really is one of the only sports where we're going to get an Arizona team facing a team from Alaska. So that let alone is cool. But I don't know if you saw, there was a video making the rounds on the internet. The Arizona State bus got stuck in what looked like the middle of nowhere up in Alaska in the middle of the snow. Kind of looked like an episode out of Ice Road Truckers or whatever that show is. And the players had to get out and push the bus. And it was pretty funny, because it's just like the things that can happen when you try and go driving a bus in Alaska.
Yeah, that is crazy.
But yeah, Alaska Fairbanks, probably the better of the 2 Alaska programs. They got a split with Arizona State. Arizona State probably a little bit of a better program, but 2 good teams. And Michigan State and Penn State split. Mm-hmm. I don't really know what to pull from that one too much. Penn State is a much superior team to Michigan State, I believe. So I kind of expected a sweep. But it's just another one where I look at that and I say, how good is Penn State really? Because they have some great wins and they have some puzzling losses. So I just need to see more from the Nittany Lions. You mentioned the Notre Dame-Ohio State game. BU tied and lost a close game to Providence, as we mentioned when we were talking about Jack Dugan. Again, the Terriers aren't what they have been in the past. I don't know if they're going to compete for Hockey's championship or anything like that. But it's clear watching them week in and week out, especially against some of the better teams in the conference, that that team has a lot of spunk. And as always, they are not an easy out. So I thought the Terriers looked good, even though they didn't pick up a victory. And also Minnesota State sweeping Michigan Tech to take over number 1 in the polls. Minnesota State is awesome, as most teams in Minnesota are. And because Denver lost, there was an opportunity there for Minnesota State to surge to the top of the rankings, and they did just that. So big weekend for Minnesota State. And yeah, so let's go from that right into the polls. I'll kind of go through the top 20, and then I know you have some takeaways, Pat.
Yep.
Number 1, as I said, Minnesota State. Number 2, Denver, followed by Cornell, Notre Dame, UMass, Minnesota-Duluth, Clarkson, Penn State, North Dakota, Providence at number 10. Then Ohio State, UMass Lowell, Harvard, Northeastern, Wisconsin, Boston College, Bowling Green, Northern Michigan, Omaha, and then Western Michigan at number 20. Again, my big thing with the rankings this week is the fact that UNH somehow didn't get any love. They did get, I think, 43 votes or something like that. Yep. Selfishly, I wanted to see them get in there. I thought there was an opportunity with Quinnipiac sliding out and a couple other teams losing, but what are you going to do? like you said, maybe they have to go out and have another good weekend, and they'll find their way into the top 20. But what did anything that stuck out to you in the new rankings, Pat?
The biggest thing that stuck out to me, I think, was that Harvard was the biggest riser of the week. They went from 18 to 13 after they beat Princeton 3-0, and then they smoked the then number 15, now unranked Quinnipiac 7-2. And so it was a great weekend for Harvard, but they are 3-0 on the season. They're also one of the 3 teams that are undefeated, but they've only played 3 games, and so I'm surprised to see them make that big of a jump, even though they did have a solid weekend. And then another thing that kind of stuck out to me was after losing to UNH 3-1, UMass dropped from 2-5. And so I understand that UMass is perennially one of the best programs in the country, and I'm sure when the season comes to a close, they're going to be still very near the top of the rankings. But after a loss to unranked UNH, I'm surprised to see that they didn't go any further, especially because Minnesota-Duluth, who did beat Denver, who was the number 1, is now 6, and UMass is still above them at 5.
Yeah, that was a surprise to me. I thought Minnesota-Duluth did enough to leapfrog UMass. But again, it's one of those things where all these teams are so good that it's, what's a couple spots in the rankings to any of them.
Absolutely.
But it's still, I looked at that and I couldn't help but think, how does UMass lose to an unranked team in Minnesota-Duluth? Frankly, dominates might be a little strong, but they looked really good against Denver, who was the number 1 team in the country. So I think Minnesota-Duluth probably should be ahead of UMass. But maybe, again, they're 4-3-1. So that might have something to do with it. But yeah, that stuck out to me as well. Okay, so before we get to our interview with Mitch Fossier, I just want to touch on this weekend's Maine UNH game. This is a game that at the start of the season, if you looked ahead at the schedule, you might not necessarily, a lot of people would have circled it just because it's a rivalry game, but also for just general college hockey fans, this I think is a must-watch game because both teams, I don't think we really knew what to expect from them going into the season, but both are off to really good starts. We talked about UNH, their victory over UMass. They're now 5-2-1. Maine is 5-3-2. They have some good wins this season. They did tie and lose to UMass Lowell over the weekend, but they were competitive in both of those games. They looked good. Not that obviously didn't get a victory, but I think there's still enough there to say that Maine is a good team.
Yep.
And so I think that's going to be just a competitive game. And growing up, I was a huge UNH hockey fan all throughout my childhood, and still am. And I went to the Whittemore Center and in Alphon Arena back in the day for those UNH Maine games when they'd have the whiteout the arena nights with the thunder sticks, and it was just awesome environment. Those are awesome rivalry games. If you're a college hockey fan, if you ever get a chance to go to UNH Maine game, you should do it. So I'm jealous of all those who get to be up in Orono this weekend for that game. Should be a great one. And so our interview guest, Mitch Fossier, of course, also looking forward to that game. The captain for Maine is off to another strong start to the season. He has 2 goals and 9 assists. He's led the team in scoring each of the last 2 years. This is his first year as a captain. So it's it's been a big season for him. So we talked about, just what he worked on during the offseason. We talked about the UNH Maine game. But also, this guy you talk about multi-talented. He's one of those players who he's on all the all-scholastic teams. When you look at all the guys who also excel in the classroom, he's in all those. He also is a singer. And I didn't know this. I was kind of looking into him and doing some research before I interviewed him. And not only does he sing and he plays guitar and probably maybe some other instruments, I don't know. I believe he records other artists as he's an independent contractor. So he does some of that work on the side. But if you search for him on YouTube and find his YouTube channel, he's got a couple of songs on there. And I'm not just saying this because he was our podcast guest, but he actually was quite talented. I thought he has a great voice, clearly knows how to play guitar. I'm not some guitar master or anything, but when you watch him, it's pretty clear that he's very talented. So it's pretty cool. I thought he was a really interesting guy to talk to. And I hope you enjoy it. So we'll get right to our interview with Maine captain Mitch Fossier. So I'm here with University of Maine captain Mitch Fossier. Mitch, how you doing?
Good, how you doing?
Good. So first off, before we get into all the other stuff, I just wanted to ask what it meant to you to be named team captain in your final season. Obviously, that's a pretty big honor.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a super humbling privilege to be named captain of such a historic school. Especially considering the group of guys that we have, I think there's a lot of guys in this room that could have been named captain and would have done a great job. So I feel, certainly privileged, but, it also makes my job a lot easier because there's a bunch of other guys on the team that are great leaders, even outside of the alternate captain. So privileged and blessed for sure, and it's something I don't take lightly.
Great. Okay, so you guys had a rough loss to Providence in your season opener. People that haven't watched you probably thought, this is going to be another tough year for Maine maybe. But you guys rebounded with some big wins over some really good teams. What's been key for you amid this strong start?
I just think the culture in the locker room is different than I've seen it in my 4 years. Our first weekend certainly wasn't a good one, and everything that kind of could have went wrong seemed to do that. But I think just every day coming to the rink this year, guys are excited to be here, seeing each other. There's just an attitude, that we're here to work, but we're also going to have fun while we do it. And I think it's made such a big difference. There's just a culture where there's an expectancy that we're going to win. And outside of that first weekend, I think every game we've given ourselves a chance to win.
Well, and on that note, listen, everybody always says there's no easy outs in Hockey East. But in reality, how important is it to, especially early in the season, make an actual statement to league teams that they're in for a tough night when they face you guys?
Yeah, I think that's, something that we want to be known for. We want to be the hardest team to play against in college hockey. We're a team that has a lot of speed and a lot of size. And when we get pucks deep behind their defensemen and go to work, teams have a really tough time containing us. So these early Hockey East games are important. In the past, we haven't done a great job winning some of these games that we probably should have, where I think we've done a better job of that this year. Because it's important, down the stretch, that makes a difference between playoffs and home ice. And so, there's not a game in college hockey just with, there being so few of them that you can take off. So it's extremely important to, get this train rolling, and again, just the cultural piece, getting that, ingrained into our system.
Now, on a personal note, I think you led the team in scoring the past couple of years, if I have that right. And you're off to another strong start this year with 2 goals and 9 assists. So just again, personally, what's been key for you at the start of the season? And what, if anything, did you work on during the off season?
I personally have expectations for myself to be successful, and obviously, try and lead this team on the ice as well. So I think off the season, one of the biggest things for me was just kind of improving my shot. I need to, score some goals for our team to be successful. And so I worked a lot on that this past summer. I think overall, just in the word, but expectancy. I've been here. This is my 4th year, so I know what it's like, and I'm confident in my ability. So I think there's confidence that really carries itself as you experience more and more college hockey, and you've had that past success to lean on. But overall, this summer, I think a lot of it was the same stuff. I definitely made a point of emphasis to get on the ice as much as I can and shoot as many pucks as I could.
Okay, so let's talk about this weekend's series against UNH. Obviously a big rivalry game. If I'm being honest, I grew up a huge UNH fan, so I remember when both arenas, I went to those games when those arenas were absolutely nuts, so I'm looking forward to it. How much are you looking forward to these 2 games? Just, as just talking about the rivalry in general.
Yeah, it's an absolute blast. Anytime, we play them, it's, whether it's here or there, it's pretty much a guaranteed, sold out crowd. And just, the atmosphere, the way, both schools kind of rally behind their teams, and just give that extra energy in either arena is something special. So it's something we really look forward to, and we feel, really excited and privileged to be able to, do this. This is one of, the privileges of playing at UMaine is playing UNH at home, because we have some rowdy fans, and this Friday and Saturday are going to be two fun games for sure.
Well, and on UNH, they're kind of having a similar start to you guys in that they might be exceeding some expectations. I know you're focused on your own team, but early on, what have your thoughts been on the Wildcats so far?
Honestly, couldn't tell you. I've checked box scores and seen that they've had some success, but kind of like you alluded to, we try to kind of focus on what we can control in our team, and we know they're going to be a good team, and honestly, anytime that we play each other, just with the rivalry and kind of the hatred between the 2 schools, it's going to be a tough game. So it doesn't change too much for us. We're kind of focused on what we can control and playing our game.
Okay, so just a couple more. I wanted to ask about your music career.
So I'll be honest, I had no idea. I was sort of just looking up information on you. Is it just a hobby? I know you do some recording work. I think that says something about independent contracting and all that. But what are your larger aspirations, if any, with music?
Yeah, no, if I mean, I guess it's somewhat of a hobby, but if I could, find a way to make a living out of it somehow, someday, I'd certainly, do that as long as I could. So it's, outside of hockey, it's probably, my biggest passion is playing music and recording and any sort of the process, really. So I actually get to study a good bit of, the audio engineering aspect up at school and play as much as I can. So it's a lot of fun, and I think it's good to have something else to, to kind of put some attention to during the hockey season for sure.
Who are some of your bigger influences on the music side?
Oh, that's a tough question. I don't know. I think it's changed a lot over the years. I think in the last, half a decade, a lot of singer-songwriters, some of, maybe the more prominent ones. I guess it's not all singer-songwriters, but maybe the more prominent artists have been The Head and the Heart, the Lumineers, even bands like The Killers and the Strokes have been really big influences for me.
Yeah, I'm a huge Strokes fan, so I love that one.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah, listen, so, and I looked at, I watched a couple of your videos on YouTube, and I'm not just saying this because you're on the podcast, but I think you're really great and you're really talented. So I was wondering, I think it was like last year or the year before, I saw some team, one of the players on the team sang the national anthem at the game. Is there any way Maine could ever talk you into doing that?
I don't think so. I think I'd cave under the pressure. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I'm curious. So I want to see who did that because I've never heard of that. Someone actually doing that. That's pretty funny. But no, I don't think I could ever do that.
Yeah, I forget who it was. It might have been it was either like at the AHL All-Star game or maybe it was in like the Quebec Major League. I don't know. It was something. But yeah, look it up because it should be pretty easy to find.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, that's all I got, Mitch. I just want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me. Obviously, again, I'm a huge UNH fan. I've hated Maine my entire life, but you're a pretty easy guy to root for, so I wish you the best of luck the rest of the way, and good luck this weekend against UNH.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, man.
Welcome back, everybody. Again, I want to thank Mitch Fossier. I thought that was it was really great talking to him. Again, I've hated the Maine Black Bears my whole life, but I think Mitch is a really easy guy to root for. Really cool guy. Again, multi-talented. If you get a chance, look up his music on YouTube. And obviously, I want UNH to win this weekend, but wish him the best of luck going on through the rest of the season. Cool guy, easy to root for. And again, you can watch UNH and Maine play this weekend. That game is at 7 p.m. on NESN Plus. All of our hockey's coverage is brought to you by Rockland Trust, where each relationship matters. It's our only college hockey game this weekend. We have I think 3 or 4 next weekend, but it's the only one this weekend. We got a lot of college basketball games on NESN as the college basketball schedule starts to ramp up. But even though it's just one game, it's a great game. So I highly recommend watching that. 2 good teams and a storied rivalry. So definitely excited about that. We only got a couple minutes left here. I want to kind of just go through rapid fire a few games that we got our eyes on heading into the weekend. I'll start with number 3 Cornell and number 7 Clarkson. Listen, these are 2 programs. When everybody talks about the national powerhouses for college hockey, you mentioned the Minnesota teams, North Dakota, Denver, the Hockey East teams. No one ever really mentions Cornell and Clarkson, but year in and year out, they're really, really good teams, quality programs. And again, this is number 3 versus number 7. I just think it's 2 highly talented teams, a lot of good hockey, and again, it's kind of like that Notre Dame Ohio State series that we saw over the weekend, where 2 high-ranked teams, great hockey, just a showdown between 2 of the best programs in the nation. So I'm looking forward to watching that if I can find a way.
Absolutely. One of the biggest games I'm looking forward to watching is number 13 Harvard versus Brown. So like I've mentioned already, Harvard's one of the 3 teams in the country that are still unbeaten, but they're only 3-0. So I'm interested in seeing what team we're actually going to see this season.
Right. How good are they really?
And also, don't sleep on Brown. This could be an upset watch, I think.
Yeah, Brown is a sneaky team too. Again, these Ivy League teams, or Ivy League schools, haven't played a ton of games yet.
Yep.
But I think Brown has had a good team in recent seasons. Mm-hmm. They, like Dartmouth, got a little bit of preseason love in the polls in terms of they got a few votes, and I think there's some expectations for them. So I'm curious to see how they perform against Harvard, who most people think is, probably the class of that conference. And should be a good game. I'm also looking forward to number 14 Northeastern at number 10 Providence. Good hockeyist matchup really at the end of the day. I want to see how Northeastern rebounds from probably, disappointing is too strong against to describe how they did against Merrimack, but they lost a couple games previous week. They've kind of been struggling a little bit. Still don't really doubt that they're one of the better teams in the conference, let alone the country. But I just want to see how Northeastern looks. And same with Providence. Overall, it's been a good season for the Friars, but they've been up and down a little bit. So I just think it's a good statement opportunity for both games. And, just two hockeyist teams. And should be a great game. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Another big one that we should be on the lookout for is number 5 UMass versus BU. They have a home and home this weekend. And so we've already touched upon UMass and BU a little bit. So UMass is coming off of a tough weekend. So hopefully we'll see if they can rebound. But also BU, they haven't had a typical Boston University-ish season so far, but they've been a strong program in recent memory. And so I'm sure at some point they're going to turn it around. So I'm interested if this is going to be that weekend. So the biggest thing to look out for here is, will UMass rebound after that tough loss, or can BU get it going?
Right, and I wouldn't put it past the Terriers to pull off an upset in this game.
Absolutely.
No, they're not BU of a few seasons ago, but they're still a quality team. Definitely not an easy out. Ton of talent over on that side. But I got to believe that Coach Greg Carville over at UMass, who we talked to last week, I got to believe he gave it to his players pretty good after that performance against UNH. So it wouldn't shock me at all if UMass just comes out blazing in that game and really takes it to the Terriers. But we'll see. Lastly, number 4 Notre Dame has 2 games against number 15 Wisconsin. Just a great Big Ten matchup. Wisconsin, people kind of forget them a little bit, but they have a ton of talent. They're capable of beating anybody in the country, including Notre Dame, who has proven itself to be one of the best teams in the nation. So if you get a chance to watch that game, I'm not sure if they'll be on TV or if you'll have to find streaming or whatever it may be. But if you get a chance, tune into that one, because a ton of good players. I think it should be a couple really good games between the Irish and the Badgers. So that's all I got for games, Pat. Do you have anything else?
I think we've covered it all. I'm just excited for this week ahead.
Yeah, it should be a great weekend. We got to get out of here. Again, I want to thank Mitch Fossier for coming on the program this week. Again, go check out his music if you can. And looking forward to this weekend's game between Maine and UNH. And want to thank all of you for listening to us. And we will get back to you next week. Thanks for listening, everybody.